Good morning. We'll get started. Couple of housekeeping issues. Number one, we don't have internet service here. Number two, when you ask a question, keep the microphone directly in front of your mouth like this. You know, the robot look. For some reason, if you get too far off, it'll start breaking up, and I think we're taping this. And number three, we seem to be having some AC issues, so if you want to take your coats off like I did, please feel free to do so. Thank you for being here today, and welcome to the SkillSource Northern Virginia Regional Conversation Series, sponsored by the SkillSource Group. I'm George Harvin. I'm the Director of Existing Business with Prince William County. I've been there for 6 years, and this is one thing I'll say about this region. It's one of the most dynamic areas you've ever seen. I'm also honored to serve on the Northern Virginia Workforce Development Board and SkillSource Board of Directors, and so pleased to be the moderator of today's discussion on improving the Northern Virginia labor market participation rate. I think you're gonna see some slides from people, and we're gonna I hope we have a very, very robust discussion, and that's that's really the goal of this, to hear what y'all want to ask us, any discussion we have. My presentation is like 9 slides. I'm gonna whip right through them, focus on 2 or 3 of them. Hope the other speakers, if they have the chance to do that, will do the same thing. Today you're gonna hear from 3 outstanding speakers. One is from the Virginia Employment Commission, one's from Fairfax County, and one is from IFC International. Our panel members. Carla Bruce is the Deputy Director for Neighborhood Community Services with the Fairfax government. Carla is a dedicated public servant with 20 years experience leading the efforts to address the most challenging social issues facing our community, and are proven success in bridging the policies and practices of local government and the collective action of partners from the civic, nonprofit, philanthropic, faith, and business sectors to effect positive change for youth, families, and communities. That's pretty impressive. Tim Kestner. Tim is the Director of Economic Information and Analytics Division of the Virginia Employment Commission, where he leads the operation of Virginia's official source of labor market information. And as someone in economic development who's been in several states, let me tell you, that information is invaluable to us. He is the past president of both the Virginia Association of Economists and the Richmond Association of Business Economists. Tim is an adjunct professor of the International Studies at VCU, where he received his undergraduate degree. That is a wonderful university. And he holds a graduate degree from the University of Richmond. He's been in the executive branch too, holding senior positions in both the U.S. Senate and the House, and was a member of the Senior Executive Service of the U.S. Department of Labor and Health and Human Services. Currently, he is a senior fellow at ICF International and a principal of the Fulcrum Group, where he utilizes this experience in providing clients with guidance in strategic planning, partnership development, and accessing public and private funding sources. I'm going to set the stage with a few slides. Again, there's only a couple I'm really going to focus on. But the one thing I want you to look at when you see this, keep in mind is, there we go. This is labor force participation rates across Virginia. Notice the colors.
Excuse me, George.
Yeah.
Your mic is working. We can barely hear you.
So you might want to try and hear them.
Just talk.
I prefer that anyway. When you look at this map, notice something. These colors over here, they're showing a low workforce participation rate. If you look at Northern Virginia, those rates up there, look at that. We're at 76%. We're at 76%, 70% for the lowest. What's the state? 66%. What's the USA? 63.7%. Keep that in mind. We already have a high labor force participation rate. Put that in context with something else. The unemployment rate for counties in this part of the state is anywhere between 2.7 and 3.6%. I suspect if you talk to most economies, they will tell you you are basically at full employment. So now the question becomes, where do we get these employees to fill the positions that we have now? And that is an ongoing challenge. But I'll tell you, I'll take that over where I've been before, where you can't get jobs for people. That's one of the great things about this area. The other part that I think is interesting is this one. If you look at some of the subcategories of workforce participation, again, we exceed the nation and the state considerably. In this case, it's disabled or impoverished. And if you look at educational rates, again, we exceed the nation, or we exceed the state. So again, when you look at labor force participation overall, we're doing really well compared to anybody else. Now the issue again is, how do we get more people in the labor force for this purpose? Now, we spend a few minutes talking about this channel, some of the issues that we've all seen. And this is more, I'm just going to ask a few questions, and then we're going to just discuss it in general. So the first question that I've got, and this is mainly for Tim who wants to go in, we're seeing a vast improvement in the labor force participation rate. Is this real, or is this a blip, or is this something that we will continue to see? And also, when we look at the age of retirement and we look at current workforce, what is a specific definition of the demographic? I'll put the question to Tim first. What are your comments?
I've been practicing the art of pivoting for a while, so if I don't answer your question, it's because I'm still practicing. But seriously, the participation rate is better than it has been, but it's a function of the labor force or the labor market in general. And by that, what I mean is when we calculate the participation rate, we take 16 and over population, and we subtract out the military people, we subtract out folks that are in government-sanctioned institutions, penal institutions, and we look at that gives us the civilian, non-institutionalized population, those people that may be in the labor force or would want to be, or could be. Many people choose not to work because they are wealthy. They don't need to work, and I suppose we all need to work here this morning. I don't really think this is on.
I'm sorry. We seem to have any number of technical issues this morning, for which I
That's fine.
apologize.
I'm used to lecturing.
Don't worry,
to
Sheila.
students, so I'm fine with that. If I see you texting, I'll likely call you out. And I really forgot your questions this morning. So, I think the upswing in the participation rate is coming from the fact that the labor force is growing because we're recovering from the Great Recession, and that segment 65 and older. If you dilute the data, 65 and over are working a little bit more than they once were. With that, the other demographics in terms of age 16 to 24 or 24 to 35, in those groups, they're declining. They have been declining over the last 10 years. And I think that's somewhat of a wealth effect in certain parts of the state, in other parts of the state, not so much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you're going to see more of a higher labor force participation rate, in part because it costs so much more to live here than it does in other places. That's the first thing. So you maybe have some degree of wealth, but it's not going to be as much as you go to a place like Southwest Virginia or Southside Virginia. The second one, as far as the youth goes, having experienced it personally with my daughter, yeah, I will tell you right now, you do see kids more and more because they can't afford to, exactly like you pointed out, that they're not going to labor force, and the number that are going to continue education and things like that. I think that's especially prevalent in an area like this. One of the surprises to me about this area when I moved here was the absolute laser focus on education by parents. The first time we went, I didn't even go, I could, but the first time my wife went to a parent-teacher conference meeting, she said there were 50, 60 parents in there. That's a lot. In Southwest, in Western Kentucky, when we did that, to the science class, there were 5 parents in the room, 2 of them being my wife and myself. And what she said, in this area, there is a culture of education. And I think that filters the reason you see a less of a lower participation rate by children of that age. You want to add anything?
Well, I mean, in terms of the labor participation rate or barriers to the current labor participation rate, I can say from working in Fairfax County and having been there for now approaching 20 years, it's been a long time. What I had anticipated being just a stop in my journey elsewhere, that we're diversifying in terms of the complexion of our community and diversifying in terms of income levels. And there is becoming a widening gap in terms of those folks that are considered to be haves and those that are considered to have not. But I think it's important to look at that sort of change in terms of who lives in Fairfax County and understand, you know, in working in local government and especially working in a county like Fairfax, it's important to look at the whole number, and then it's important to think about place and it's in terms of geography and what those numbers might look like. And it's also important to disaggregate according to race. And when you do that, you start to see very different numbers. And so when you look at the demographics of Fairfax County, it's changed significantly. So in the period between the year 2000 and 2010, our total population grew by 11%. That means so in a county of about 1 million people. So we're looking at an increase of 113,000 people. The segment of that 113,000 people are much younger. It's much more diverse and much younger. And when you look at like the population, we're talking Asian, Middle Eastern, Blacks, Latinos, that's the median age of this growth in population. For the Latino community, one of the issues is limited English proficiency. And I would say probably not, particularly the data I have is particular to the Latino community, but in general, that's one of the things where we're seeing this diversification in our community, and that again represents a barrier to job participation. And so, you know, one of the things that we always consider and that we encourage our partners to consider is sort of to think about the county, yes, in terms of its, you know, the widely held prosperity, but then to begin to disaggregate data by place and by race.
Yeah, I guess I would say, if you show me the silver lining, I'll probably point to the cloud on this. You know, it's true Virginia is, and particularly this region of Virginia, is extremely prosperous and lots of opportunity. But I think we need to be careful not to grade ourselves on a curve on this, but to really look at the historical picture of labor force participation in the United States, and that, of course, includes Virginia. You know, we've had a really significant drop in labor force participation, particularly among men, and prime age working men between the ages of 24 and 55. And I think looking at that map and your map as well, you can see where those problems are going to be concentrated. It's not good, obviously, to have a lot of people prime working age sort of they're not working, they're not looking for work, they're not showing up at all, and that helps to drive a lot of very significant social problems in the United States. I mean, I think you can link it pretty directly to the opioid crisis. We don't know exactly how that dynamic works, but a lot of the people who are not in the labor force are being treated for chronic pain, and that's driving a lot of the crises that we're seeing in terms of drug abuse and the deaths, the skyrocketing rate of deaths. So we need to celebrate the fact that, you know, that Northern Virginia is a very bright spot, but we also need to recognize there are an awful lot of people who are kind of outside that spotlight, and they're outside that spotlight and really suffering as a result of that. One thing just another point on this, which is there was very interesting work done on time studies of people who are not working, prime age working people who are not working. The average person in this country, employed person, works 9-10 hours a day. When you add up both their paid employment and what they're doing when they get home, caring for children, caring for their family members, for people who are who are not working, not looking for work, people who have dropped out of the workforce. Those people are working at any kind of work, looking for work, caring for a family member. Those people are working about 43 minutes a day. That is not good for anybody. It's not good for them, it's not good for the families, it's not good for the communities that they live in. So, again, celebrate the accomplishment of what's going on. It's much better to have a growing economy than a shrinking one. It makes everything easier, it draws people back into the workforce. But let's not forget about those people who are kind of out here on the margins and not taking part of gathering.
I want to take your comment and the 2015 census data, I assume that's what you're using here, George, to put it in context, because time studies are critical to this about Northern Virginia. Do we have census data prior to the recession, 2008, 2007, 2006, that tells us what our labor participation rate numbers were prior to the calamity, to say how has Northern Virginia shifted? Because I'd be curious to compare that figure against what we look at now. Because this looks really pretty, but I also know, Carl, you brought some stuff. Gentleman who just spoke, didn't
Brent.
Brian? Brent. My company works in workforce nationwide, and we've looked at this stuff since the recession, and we've seen hollowing out. That's trying to get into the private sector, ex-offenders trying to get into the workforce. I call them the invisible unemployed professionals trying to get into the workforce that have had very little success for a lot of reasons which I won't go into here. They're not reflected in these numbers. And they have the education in many cases. That has nothing to do with reality. So how does that look in this picture without looking at what it looked like before the recession versus what it looks like right in 15? The composition of the education, the race, the skill sets, and what's shifted. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a data point. Am I missing it, Tim?
No, I think you're spot on. Actually, this data came out of my shop.
Okay.
And we're going to be renewing it in a few weeks with new data for 2016, which I doubt the numbers change. I will say, maybe just to follow up to that, my group wants to drill deeper into this and exclude also, to segue from what Brent was talking about, maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but this includes people who are drawing disability insurance. I don't think that demographic should be in the data, because excuse it. Then that will mean more to southwestern Virginia, where I'm from, by the way. I dropped the accent for professional reasons. Seriously. People weren't taking me seriously. In Richmond. And there are many roads to Richmond, as you've heard. In southwestern Virginia, Buchanan County has a labor force participation rate around 33%. And having grown up in that area, not that far west, but having grown up in the area, I know that, I see that. And recently, the last summer, my wife and I did a medical mission in Wise, Virginia, Wise County, Virginia. And we're people watching people, so we had a lot of time to watch and look at people, and you could see that 9 out of 10 people who came through those gates were unhealthy. They came there seeking dental treatment and medical treatment. Many were drug addicts or former drug addicts. Now, we can't exclude that group from the data. We anecdotally know it's there. We don't have a good number of who is taking illicit drugs. We don't gather that. But we need to find a way to refine it to get a better look at what the rate is. I think it might be more in southwestern Virginia than other areas, especially because they're fortunate. And finally, just the last point there would be those young people, especially young people in southwestern Virginia, wives here as well, and I don't know, who want to work, who apply for jobs, who get an interview, and the boss and the hiring authority says, John, I like you. The last thing I need you to do is take this cup. And so they take a drug test and they fail. And this repeats itself. And I've read a story where a young man in his 30s was once addicted to drugs, and he's not addicted, but he still uses a form of something like marijuana occasionally. And just can't seem to let that go. And he's interviewed for 30, 40 jobs, and each time he fails the last part of it because he has some drug. And to me, I think that's a barrier that we're going to have to start, we as a great body, start dealing with. Where do we set the threshold on drug use? And I would imagine that if we forced, a good portion of the 30 to 45 professional class of workers to take a drug test monthly, many of them fail because of recreational drug use. I think that's something that's with us, and we're just going to have to find a way to do it.
Well, Tim, I'll take you up on that one.
I think you will find that in certain businesses, they can tolerate no drug use whatsoever. It cannot be tolerated. You open yourself to liability, you open your company up to liability, and it simply cannot be tolerated. There may be businesses that, quite frankly, as an employer, if I have to choose between someone that is clean and someone that is recreational, and they're basically the same, I'm going to choose the clean person. I mean, that's just a reality of what we're in. And I want to bring it back to, you look at that map and you look at Southside Virginia and Southwest Virginia, yes, they do. They have very serious problems. We're not going to solve that here. The issue we've got to figure out from my perspective, from what this is designed to do, and from the perspective of Northern Virginia, how do you get more of these people into the labor force to satisfy the job demands we have right now? Again, we're running at full employment. When companies can't find people, they're going to go somewhere else, and that's not the goal of of the Northern Virginia workforce or low-risk economic development. And I do want, but it is important to look at one part. So I want to build on it. We started. When you look at the people that are not in the workforce, you see you've got drug abuse, you've got educational attainments, or there are other things like that that are preventing people that are not participating in the workforce right now from getting into the workforce in Northern Virginia. And one thing I'd probably say is, I would suspect it's probably the public transportation here is not as strong as it could be. There's one thing that I would look at. So I don't know, there are other things y'all see out there that are hindering participation in people that we want in the workforce, but there's simply some resource or education or some issue like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could just comment on that piece because it's fun to talk about the problem, but let's try to get on the solution side of those rather than just talk about the problem. And I think that we've talked about all the barriers, the individual barriers, the personal barriers, but there's also structural barriers to participation in this economy and locally and really across the country. The increasing or the decline in the manufacturing sector has been talked about ad nauseum. The decline of sectors that are more muscle and brawn has declined significantly, and that has created a structural problem for people to get into the labor force. We are working right now on a project up in Baltimore. Many of you may have heard of this Port Covington redevelopment. The head of Under Armour, his name is Kevin Blank, is leading an effort to redevelop a really large piece of waterfront in Baltimore. If you're going across the bridge and into the tunnel, it's the last exit. You look over to the right, there's an old Baltimore land. And that's going to almost double the size of downtown Baltimore. And it's being funded through a tax increment financing package that the city of Baltimore is supporting. So the city's foregoing tax revenues in order to fund this development. It'll be paid back over a very long period of time. But in the process, it's going to create about 40,000 jobs, 40,000 to 50,000 jobs. A lot of those, especially in the early part of this, are construction. So we're looking at more jobs that require some of the skill sets that were kind of left behind in the process of deindustrialization. So what they've come to us to do is help them to design a workforce strategy that will help bring in people from Baltimore back into the workforce, people who live in Baltimore. 30% of the jobs for this project are set aside for people who live in Baltimore. Now that is a very rigorous goal to try to meet. And it's going to require a lot of work, a lot of cooperation to rebuild that skill base. Because right now we've got not only do we have low unemployment, we've got a high vacancy rate, and it gets sort of stratospheric when you reach the trades. You know, people who know how to do things with their hands. And so a lot of our effort is going to be focused on coordinating the training institutions to create the workforce that's necessary to build Port Covington. Because right now, that skilled workforce is sort of very, very thin across the country and in Baltimore. So I'm going to have to leave in a few minutes, but I just wanted to point out a couple things that I brought with me. This is about a report that we did with AEI on getting them back to work. It really looks at the problem as well as building a set of policy solutions. And then this piece, which is a description of the Port Covington work and how we can better align workforce resources to improve employment outcomes.
Before you do that,
I've got another 15 minutes. So just
one question I had is when you talk about building trades and all that, what's your timeline for one, identifying the people and two, training them to do that? 'Cause that is not going to be done, I would think, in anything like a year.
Yeah, no, it's going to be, I mean, this is a 20-year process to build Port Covington. There's going to be, we have to really look at how do we stratify the workforce so that those people who are ready to move into the workforce, we put them in, people who are just about ready to start working on what they need, and people who are well back in the starting line, what are we going to do with them? And how are we going to make sure they have access to some of this funding as well?
You got a question?
Yes, I did. I wanted to know, with your map here, and looking at this labor force participation, what about livable wage jobs? And where do they fit into the system? And also, the whole issue of people who've been justice involved. As a gentleman said earlier, people are coming out of jail and prison with felonies attached, but what they did might not necessarily be who they are. And so we judge them based on what they said.
There's two questions she asked. One is, do we look at livable wages when we do this? And then the second question is, people that may come out of prison or incarceration that is not necessarily something that should hinder them in finding a job. How do we handle that? Carla, you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I would absolutely affirm that that is a challenge. And so when you look at sort of what are some of those barriers to participation in the labor force, I think ex offenders are one of those populations that we see in our system as, you know, a population that needs to be recognized and planned for in order to hopefully overcome whatever barriers might be excluding them from full participation in the workforce. Living wage, I think, is another thing that we talk about is, you know, participation in the labor force is one thing, full participation and being able to make a wage that helps you to sustain and, you know, a basic, a level of basic need, where you're able to satisfy your basic needs. That's a discussion that I think is very important to have, representing the human services system. I would say that the majority of folks that are involved in the Fairfax County Human Services System are employed. It's just that they're not earning an income that enables them to meet their you know, the basic requirements for them to live in Fairfax County. You talk about housing prices in affordable housing. That again, it's very difficult to earn lower wages and be able to live in Fairfax County. Transportation, we talked about gaps in our transportation system. So there are a lot of things. So I think a livable wage conversation is one, that if you're going to, you know, look at numbers like these and you're going try and better understand them in the context of the people that actually live in this community. That's a discussion that's important to have. One of the things that I would say, just building upon the earlier comment, is I would label what's happening in Fort Covington as what we are understanding as equitable development, where development that creates opportunity in a community has to be inclusive of the people that live there, and then planfully strategizes, even over 20 years, how those people that live in that community will be able to participate. So one, it helps in the short term, just in terms of the development itself, but it's creating exponentially more opportunity over time. And again, what we're seeing across the country and what we're trying to encourage in Fairfax County is for those considerations to be made as development and growth are happening, and just to consider this concept of equitable development and inclusive growth. And again, with inclusive growth, really taking into consideration the who and whatever barriers might exist to their ability to fully participate. And then in terms of who participates in that planning, I appreciate the opportunity to be on this panel, because it's not typical that folks from the human services world are given the opportunity to participate in discussions in the planning, because that population, those populations that are facing barriers, are the very populations of people that we work with every day. And so it's really win-win, when you think about how we might better work together as systems to overcome these barriers.
So I would, if I could just segue off of that for a second. I mean, I gave you the cloud and the silver line. Now you're the silver line and the cloud. I mean, a growing economy and tight labor force creates opportunity for marginalized populations. And so there's a big opportunity here at this moment in time. You know how long this window is going to be open to begin to pull people back into the workforce that have been kicked out. And inclusion of human services in that discussion is critical, because human services touches the very populations that we need to be able to reach.
Well, I think it's important to know that this is a major partnership between a governmental entity and the private sector. When the governmental agency, there is no participation by them, it is much harder to do what y'all are speaking about, because there isn't much leverage on the part of us in the government to say you have to pay a wage or you have to do this. We don't have much leverage in that, and frankly, I'm not sure we should. We've been waiting very patiently.
Quick question, and I'm sure ICF has considered this, actually I just don't know about it, but this project seems like one that would be ideal to sort of as a test case for kind of pay for performance funding, and it seems like over the 20 years or however many years it's going to take to actually fulfill this project, it would be a great opportunity to examine questions like are we building sustainable wages and the kind of middle skill jobs that research has told us through 2050, 2060 are going to be available with the retirements and with just the general aging of the population. So just for edification, is there a pay for performance involved in this research?
Or? We do pay for performance. In fact, the project with SkillSource on pay for performance for youth. It isn't built formally into this project. However, I will say that the expectation has been set by both the developer in Baltimore group called Sagamore and the city of Baltimore that we're going to measure. We are going to measure jobs. We're going to measure wages. This wasn't just pay for play in terms of getting this financing package through the city council. It was going to be looked at, and there's going to be continuous quality improvement based on, who's being served, how they're being served, what works with which population, their ex-offenders, or whatever the issue is. But all that stuff is going to be measured.
And what kind of interim reporting is
right now, Sagamore, the developer, is in the process of raising their capital in order to do the construction. So we're probably not going to break ground on the actual construction until next spring. So now is the time when all of this planning process is being put into place. We've developed kind of the labor pipeline model. We've done some small tests to see what we can do in partnership with community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, local training organizations. So that we've tested it to see, will this work? We're satisfied that it can work, but the process of measuring outcomes is going to be over a long period of time, and we're going to have to, right now, set up the mechanisms and systems through which we gather the data. So that's what we're doing right now, is just getting the systems in place so that when things actually start moving, we've got a way to analyze what we're going to do. I think the city council is going to have a lot of interest in this. I think there's going to be regular requirements to testify to the city council what's going on, how many people are getting jobs, what are their wages, how long are they staying, are they progressing in employment. So,
And is there any registered apprenticeship kind of
yes,
programs
there's
involved
a
in
set
this?
aside for registered apprenticeship, there's a set aside for youth employment, the unions are involved to help with some of those. I mean, it's been a very comprehensive community planning process that went into this to get everybody on board, and our job is to keep everybody on board. So,
Let me help with something about this. I think it's interesting when you look at the equitable growth of cities, counties, and the private sector working together really well. One thing that government entities need to be somewhat aware of is you can't keep batting down businesses. If you keep hitting with bats, your good businesses are going to walk away, and that's going to be really hindrance to going any further with these type of partnerships. And sometimes you see governments or one or two elected officials take it too far. And when your business start walking away from this, now the cities have an even harder issue. How are they going to do this by themselves? And generally, they can't. So there is a point where you've got to look at a standpoint from, we're going before the city council, we're going to take all this interest. But if you want that to continue, you just can't walk in every time there's a meeting with a baseball bat trying to score points for whatever purposes.
got a question?
Yeah, we do, yeah. Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Y'all are touching on some great topics and some great points. I'm actually a barber and barber instructor, so I went through the 4-year college, got my degree. That didn't work out as far as finding a job, so I went back to the essence, which is the trades. And y'all are talking about that. However, I feel like in this area, people tend to forget about the foundation. Barbering is one of the trades that's been around, one of the longest trades and professions been around in the world, not just the U.S., but the world, correct? And I just think that sometimes we tend to forget about those, so the pushing and the backing for that is not there. And that's a little bit of what you're talking about over there as far as getting back to the trades and everything like that. But in this area for sure, it's just not, it's not really.
You're spot
pushed.
on.
And I work in 2 of the local jails right now, cutting hair too. So I'm around, I'm in the community heavy, and it's really not pushed at all. And there's a lot more.
Brent, can I just follow up? Because I wanted to ask, when we look at southwestern Virginia, and obviously, well, not just southwestern, but all of western Virginia is in a massive transition from what we hope is a dying industry in the coal and fossil fuel industries. So what they need to do is shift into a new economy and advanced manufacturing and a dependence or a respect and a reliance on trades. So we're not just looking at those upper level white collar jobs. So what I ask about Northern Virginia, and to follow up on what you're putting forward, is there a push somewhat similar to what's going on in Baltimore to start recognizing perhaps we don't have to go through a 4-year apprenticeship process, maybe we can nail it back to a 12, 18 month, and so they can get back into the labor force outside at a more sustainable wage. So I guess what I'm asking is, what are we doing to try to adjust the Northern Virginia labor market to accommodate not just that upper income set, but the lower sets as well, or not even the lower sets, but the more traditional sets.
Yeah, it's not even an income question, right? I mean, if you want to have a good life with a good living, become a plumber, become a welder. I mean, the wages are high.
You can be a business owner in 5 years.
I'm sorry?
That you can become a business owner in 5 years with your master license.
Right, so there's, in these trades, in these skilled trades, there's tremendous demand and need. There was an article in the Washington Post 3 or 4 months ago. It's called "How the Construction Industry is Going to Devour the Rest of the Economy," because we have the collapse in the housing market, no housing being built, population keeps growing. Now we're way behind in terms of the amount of housing that we need as a country, and we've got right now in the most recent job opening reports, there were almost 300,000 open construction jobs in this country. 300,000 good jobs. They pay well. They have career pathways. There's all sorts of opportunity. So I think in part it's like persuading people that this is a real thing. That if they can, stick with it, there's a job there.
Ken, if you Carl, have any comments on this? This is a really good question.
Yes. Being a government official, I need to be careful what I say, especially on film.
Just play along with me.
I won't pivot, that's what. In response to your question, sir, it's true. We, the greater we, are not focusing on those trades. And it's just true. When I hear it, I see it, and it is something that we should, because those sort of trades are good career opportunities for ex-offenders. No doubt about it. There's Crestar Bank, where it's close to my office, and there's a cafeteria. And I have a good feeling that most of the people that work at the cafeteria in terms of cooking and preparing food have had some criminal issue in their background, and they've changed their lives, right? So we do need to focus more on that. I live north of Richmond, and I take Route 1 occasionally to get home. And the other day I saw a sign outside of a business. Want a career? Stop here. We're looking for heavy equipment operators. I've never seen a sign like that before. And so we have moved away from, in my generation, going into trade schools and learning a good trade, electrical work, plumbing, mechanics. Mercedes-Benz mechanic, a mechanic will make $100,000 easily. But if you have a hot job, dirty job, and your work spans maybe 25 years because you work for something, right? As an educator, I see students in classes, these large classes, and I just want to say to them, perhaps this is not the route you should take. No offense. But consider what you're going to be paying the government back when you graduate, and I don't think, I can't say this, I'm thinking, at this rate, you're not going to graduate with any sort of accreditation, so perhaps you need to reconsider. But maybe it's my generation's fault in saying to our kids, I want you to have a much better life, and you continue that through a 4-year degree or a 6-year degree, or a master's. Not need to seem like obvious, I hope it. But you're going to need a master's degree or a PhD.
If I could add to that, you absolutely agree, and I think that when we are, again, coming from the human services perspective, understanding that there are definitely jobs where there are lower barriers, and that those jobs can lead to the ability to be owners of assets. Whether it's the owner of a business or eventually being the owner of a home, and all those things are important in terms of building wealth. I can also say from the school, working very closely with the school system, there are emerging pathways now where, you know, the traditional, you know, graduate high school, get a 4-year degree, go on for advanced diplomas, that pathway exists. And there is a greater emphasis on trades. And quite frankly, particularly in this area, some of the technology opportunities as well may require certifications, but may not require 4-year or advanced degrees. So definitely a recognition. But the one thing I do want to just point out, and again, this comes from our the understanding of equity, is that what we don't want to do is encourage tracks, in that some people can be on a track toward you know, professional level employment, and that some people can be on a track toward trade. It ought to be an option, and it should be a choice that's made available to everyone. And all of those things should be promoted as opportunities to earn a good wage and eventually be able to gain those assets that will build wealth over time. But when we think about systems and structures and how they impact our local economy, one of the things we have to be very careful about is ensuring that those systems and structures don't inadvertently create tracks for certain populations.
I apologize.
Well,
I have to leave.
Yeah.
I left some cards here if anybody needs to get in touch with me, and materials are over there. So thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
me.
I'll add one comment to that. If you consider, since the World War II, we have pushed people to go to college, the GI Bill, and we've always viewed college and college degree as a path forward. We've done that for decades. We've done that for probably 50, 60 years now. So now the perception is to really succeed, you have to have a 4-year degree. And when you talk to businesses, they'll say the same thing. We need people with technical expertise. We need people that can do this and run the machine and all that. But if you ask them, if any of these people want to go into management, does it take a 4-year degree? 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. So there's a lot of mindsets we have to change here in that respect to make that successful.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Jeff Freeberg. I'm a trainer. And what do you think employers are looking for in terms of skills?
Are we talking about millennials?
Northern Virginia. What, say that again?
Are we talking about millennials, or are we talking about just people in general? When I'm an employer, because it depends. If you're hiring millennials, one of the first things they'll ask you is, can you even show up on time on a regular basis?
What's the age of a millennial?
I would probably say anywhere between
22 to 39.
Yeah.
All right, well, millennials in Northern Virginia, what skill are employers looking for?
Actually, what I have found in working with small businesses in Prince William County is this. They want people who have the skill sets that are necessary to do the job because they don't have an HR person to train them. All right? You're seeing in a lot of smaller companies, there is no HR director. The CEO does it himself. All right? So I have to have somebody who A, can come in, B, can do the job, and C, understands the culture, and D, gets along with people because it's more of a collaborative environment.
But specifically, what skills are
Well, it
most
depends.
employers looking for?
Well, it depends if you're talking in the contracting world and the IT world. There's IT skills that they're looking for. I can't tell you exactly what IT skills because it varies, but it's basically some type of IT skill that allows them to do some type of program or website or development or something like that. That's just one category of that. In advanced manufacturing, what they're looking for are people who can actually operate machines. And a point, something that you said that's really important. I've had 2 or 3 businesses that I'm working with. They can't find anybody in this area that even teaches them.
Teachers what?
Basically machine skills. So they have to go to Southside Virginia or Southwest Virginia community colleges to find the people that they need because it simply isn't taught here. But by the same token, when you consider Northern Virginia, we are not a manufacturing mecca by any stretch of the imagination. So it's understandable that's where they have to go. If you want a perfect example of what you're seeing, look at any university out here, public or private, and you're going to see an emphasis on cybersecurity in some form or fashion.
So what skills should people trying to better their lives pursue in order to get a job? What are their best chances of getting a job in terms of preparing for that job?
Are you talking about a career field, or are you talking about soft skills that translate across all different organizations? Because innovation and flexibility and those sorts of things are going to be across the board. And so somebody who comes into, whether it's a trade or an IT field, if they have those kinds of skills, they're more likely to be successful.
And it's a combination. It's the technical skills that they have to build, but it's also the soft skills. that
I'm
they
so
have to
happy
master.
you're talking about soft skills. I
We're
really
glad to
am.
get you one of these.
Well, let's be honest, with the millennial population, is the soft skills is the greatest asset that is missing. They're the ones that don't have those soft skills, particularly collaboration, working with other people, communication styles are totally different. I've had clients that they hired all the millennials. They've got all the advanced degrees and all the certs. But then they ask, can I have an adult come in and manage these people?
I call it getting and keeping a job.
Well, it's more than
It's an
that.
aspect of soft skills.
You asked
No.
a very good question. Tim, is there anything you can line us on the topics, skill sets employees are looking for around here?
But I wanted to get to Tim about his numbers.
Well, we'll get to that.
Just a brief comment on this, lady's been
Yeah,
patiently waiting.
My thing is the hiring practices, I think, has affected the way people feel about looking for jobs. Personally, I had to do caregiving, take care of a parent, and then I wanted to go back to the workforce. And it's very frustrating to sit there in a computer for 8 hours a day, sending a resume, and you can't get anybody to meet person to person. I'm in Northern Virginia, and I'm very lucky. I grew up in Reston. I'm very talented. I got a college degree. I can imagine the rest of the people out there that might suffer from depression. I mean, we have bombardation of information. The social media makes you feel bad. Then we have the competition of the people who have IT skills, and they may, out of school they're making 6 figures. But what about those people that gave their life to do caregiving and want to get back to the workforce? They're the ones that were more affected during the recession because they were taking care of their children or parents, the 1099s. You sit in front of that computer and you start sending your resume. It doesn't matter if you have a master's. I know so many people that have been trying to look for jobs, and the algorithms that they pick now on the computer, after a while, why not? Then better have a drink and a joint. And and I'm not doing that, but I'm just. I'm not that rubbery. But what I'm saying is, the psychology of people getting depressed, especially if you're at an age that you don't feel like you can compete with a millennial, because they know everything, and of course they're doing better because they're living in their parents' basements, and they don't have to worry about housing at some point. They don't have to worry about health insurance until they're 26. We're calling them kids when they're 34 years of age. I don't think at 34 you should be calling somebody a kid. They're supposed to be a man or a woman.
I think I can address that in 2 ways. There are 2 things that I've seen change since I was in my 20s. The first thing is that when you go to seek a job, you could get a few minutes with an HR person. So you had that face-to-face. They could say, yes, we're interested, no, we're not, come back tomorrow, what have you. And to your point, yeah, you're just one of many. There's an algorithm working somewhere. You're either selected or you're not. And competition is so great these days. And it's like hyper-concentrated on competition because it's secondly, what I've seen is a shift that disturbs me, and it's controversial, and I'm fine with that. It's that when I was growing up, you could get on-the-job training if the boss thought, Tim, I see potential in you. And I'm like, good, my dad doesn't, but I see potential. So he would hire a Tim and train Tim on the job. I think employers are less willing to do that. So I would throw the question back on those of you that are employers. Are you willing to give someone a chance and train them on the job? Not to run SQL Server of, develop code for that. I hire people to do that, and they have to have that skill. But things that can be learned on the job, are you willing to do
I have found 3 businesses that go into their low bids, and they're all privately owned, family-owned businesses. That's a key thing. They have employees that have been there for 30-something years, and they have skill sets that they need. They're going into the high schools and finding people there that want to do what I call technical skills. And they're going to bring them in, and they're going to train them, and they're going to have probably, if they work out well enough, they're going to be they can have a lifetime job. I think that is the exception more than the rule, because most businesses, HR from when we knew it growing up was about, getting the best people and people are not a commodity. Today, HR is by and large about compliance, not about getting the best people. I know, some of you think you'll add.
I think I'm going to defer to this gentleman. Yeah.
So, a lot of subjects have been covered, but let me put some data out. I used to chair workforce investment for Loudoun County, Fairfax, principally. Number one, to the prison issue. Fairfax and Loudoun have very renowned programs for helping people coming out of prison to be employed. It doesn't cover everybody, but we set a national standard for the government. The Workforce Investment Act money allocated to that. We need to do more, a lot more. But I think we had an 82% success rate in Fairfax County for a 3-year period, which was really admirable. You have an organization called Skills USA. It sits in Loudoun County. The international headquarters is there. Over 200,000 students a year compete and learn through the public school system basic skills jobs. It should be 400,000, 600,000. But you want a vibrant success story, go look at Skills USA. Bringing people into auto mechanics to earn the 60, 70, 80, 100, 120,000. ASE, Automotive Service Excellence, sits in Loudoun County with their headquarters, and they run a whole educational group called NATEF, which is training students in high school. But you hit the nail on the head. It's the parents. The parents go, I don't want my kid to learn that. They're going to get their hands dirty. They're going to college. So think of this. You might not have the people you want, but where are the parents creating that as a career opportunity? I wanted to be a chef. In 1960, that was considered a servant-paid job. And there are only 4 universities that offered programs in that. So, yet I went down that path for hospitality. The issue with Covington. Covington's great. But let's not forget Kevin Plate's $1 billion he's put behind that. Who else in this room is prepared to put $1 billion and then try to take on the bureaucracy of Baltimore to make that happen? I mean, I give it less than a 50% chance of total success because of what you said, the government, a few greedy politicians wanting to jump into that. So it takes a federal government, state government, county government, but it takes people like Kevin Plate, who was fortunate enough to be able to afford to make $1 billion donation over time into that process. If it works, it's back to you need participation, but people have to want to work. And so what the concept of a millennial is for good work skills, I'm not sure the small business wants to hire me. I'm a small business. I've owned my company for 26 years. I ran HR for Marriott Corporation. On the food side of the business, we had 250,000 employees and served 5 million meals a day. And every time we keep tightening up our labor laws and we keep throwing work back on companies, companies go, whoa, maybe I don't want to hire so many people. Or today, we've now created alternative employment. So alternative employment are Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, people who service Airbnb housing, where the owners are remote. All of those, and some of them, but not all of that employment, is counted by the Labor Department. It's called the shadow employment. You have contractor employment, you have consultative employment, you have cash employment. All of those should be paying taxes to be counted in the labor force, but there are ways to legally set up your own LLC, and you can not have everything considered as payroll income. So therefore, it comes under the poverty level. And by the way, when you pay the average unemployed person with a family and some responsibilities $32,000 not to work, why would you? So let's put the system back in balance. And I'm not making excuses, I'm just painting a reality picture. I've written books on this, I've been public speaking on it, I'm on the news media, and my own company is a career management force, and we work both domestically and internationally. These are all valid issues, but we need to focus on.
Thank you. You had a question.
I do. We are a community and faith-based organization in Prince William County. And my question would be, where do we fit in terms of working with government? This is kind of the first time in my brain I'm turning around working with government officials, because we've mostly been partnering with other community-based organizations, attempting to partner with another community college. But our organization definitely serves people that some educational institutions still leave behind. So where could we fit in, or where could we help in terms of employers and developing a workforce? Where could we fit in for government? Where's our spot? Where do you see community-based organizations fitting?
Yeah, so I mean, right? So we work with a large number of community-based organizations in Fairfax County and service providers. And I think what our shift is becoming is sort of better understanding that we're a system, and better understanding the role of these organizations, and in some cases our own programs, as being conduits in making those connections. So not fully knowing the network of opportunities available in Prince William County, what I can say in my experience is that we definitely encourage the network building that exists between county government, service providers, and the network of community-based organizations that we so heavily rely upon for services. And we're learning more to better understand that role and sort of how we can support that networking and facilitation and infusing information to support those organizations in terms of opportunities, but really recognizing that role as a conduit. Because our goal is not to, sort of serve people and keep them where they are. We want to put them on pathways. And so if we can better understand that we are all partners across all the sectors probably represented here today, it's what role do we play along that pathway, and what are the handoffs on either end? How are we receiving folks into our system? What's the level of service provision that we're offering that's positioning them to exit the system, and hopefully exit the system into some of the opportunities that exist here in Northern Virginia?
Yes.
So first, thanks to everyone on the panel for all their great insights today so far. I work as an employment development specialist with ServiceSource, and we're a nonprofit in the Northern Virginia area that does help to place people into positions, a lot of times from underserved populations, veterans, people with disabilities, and then we provide kind of on-site training and support for them once they enter the job. One question I had was, we've talked a lot about kind of the change in HR recently and how that's made it more difficult for people to stand out or feel like they can get kind of that one-on-one interview or interaction with an employer when they're applying for jobs. My question, because I work with a lot of individuals on the autism spectrum, or individuals that might have trouble with the kind of traditional process of applying for a job, doing the networking that's necessary to meet with employers. And if they get an interview, it might be difficult for a lot of them to feel comfortable communicating to an employer in a way that makes that employer feel comfortable hiring that person on for the job. But a lot of these individuals do have the skills necessary to perform those jobs. And kind of after the interview process, they might not be expected to kind of communicate in that way or answer those types of questions that might not be actually relevant to performing the job. So my question is there, are businesses starting to consider alternative methods of interviewing or screening candidates for positions that maybe are more kind of skills-based interviews, or way for candidates to demonstrate their skills in a way that doesn't force them to kind of communicate in this interpersonal way that might be difficult for some individuals with disabilities?
The biggest challenge you're going to have is that businesses don't know where or how to do this. In Prince William County, there's an organization called Midland. They specialize in placing challenged individuals.
What was the name of the organization?
Didley, D-I-D-L-E-K-E. That's their goal. That's their primary goal. And what you have sometimes in a case like that is, we had a business in Prince William County, I was just reading about it. One of the goals that came from corporate in Texas was, we want to make an effort to hire more challenged individuals. Well, the person that was in charge of the facility did not know what Didley was, and Didley did not know who they were. So by making a connection, I think they hired maybe 3 or 4 people. Now that's, understand something, that's a company saying that's one of our goals to do that. Not all companies are going to do that. But the main thing to be to find the companies that are going to do that, and then point yourself out as we can help you achieve that goal. By making the local person look good to his corporate, it's probably one of the things we do. It is not, I was once asked what's one of the best things you did, and I said I helped 3 people find a job with a company that was specifically interested in hiring a certain type of individual. In the whole scheme of this county, of this whole area, do 3 jobs mean anything? That's less than a rounding error. But it is important, because when you take a group of individuals and you take a company interested in doing that and you match them, then that is a huge success in my opinion. Y'all go ahead. Yeah.
I think outreach is everything. Networking is everything. I would advise you to attend the quarterly meetings here at this local workforce board. Ask those questions. The Virginia Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services, they, in my opinion, they've done a splendid job in helping people with disabilities and ex-offenders find jobs. So your nonprofit, I think, should reach out and work with DARS as an acronym. There are also tax credits that employers can get. I'm not sure how granular those tax credits are, but my agency monitors some of that. Tax credit for hiring someone with a criminal, an ex-offender, or someone with a disability. So there are opportunities available that George's point, if you don't know, you don't know. And I've been advocating putting some sort of network of information together that's either sponsored by my agency or some other agency. So it's a warehouse for all of these little known facts and knowledge.
Can I just...
Wait. No.
I would just encourage, these, like you said, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so good ideas just need to be planted somewhere. And so I wouldn't accept it as a barrier, and just, again, be a part of the networks where you can plant those ideas, and typically you'll find someone else that, can sort of help it grow. But I think the point you make is a very important one that may not have been considered. And again, when you don't know what you don't know, sometimes you just need someone to infuse some thinking that would stimulate other ideas.
Yeah, and DARS is, we get referrals from DARS and also local kind of community services boards, so we work with a lot of local, both at the state level and at the county level organizations.
Do you work with Sherman?
Excuse me?
Sherman?
No.
Okay, you probably should.
I was just going to say, my name is Karen Small. I sit on the board of the Northern Virginia Workforce Development Board, and we do have a subcommittee. It's the Disabilities Committee. And if you are interested, Evan, in that particular subject matter, I would encourage you to come out and participate in that subcommittee. Seema Jane, who is in the room, she can provide you with the contact information for the chair of that board.
Okay, great.
To touch on those topics.
And all of the county governments that we represent are organizations that we think we should connect with them.
Yeah.
But certainly that's a it's a decent pay, so it's not one of those we try you out or you work part-time. It's going to be a full-time gig. Lots of, I think, lots of part-time.
Can I just back
Go
up
ahead,
one
please.
second? Tim had mentioned the work opportunity tax credit, which is a huge benefit to employers that hire any number of targeted populations that face challenges, including veterans, ex-offenders, people with disabilities. But on the flip side of that, and I think it's one of the things we're addressing here where we've got both government and industry trying to work together, is that there's also something called the Earned Income Tax Credit, the EITC. This benefits those low-income job earners or wage earners who are getting tax credits for staying employed, for going into these jobs and getting on a pathway and earning their income. And right now, that's primarily focused on single mothers with dependent children. And I think one thing that we need to do is to educate both the employers about the work opportunity tax credit and then the job seekers and employers to advertise this earned income tax credit.
Yes, very good point.
Thank you, George. I wanted to pick up on Tim. Thank you for providing the data. I'd love to dig further in it in your earliest convenience because I think there's a lot more to learn out of what you have. And if we can get a time perspective, 07, 06 against now, 15 or 16, to see what shifted up here would be very helpful. If we can break it out a little further, that would be very useful because we're sitting around the same 70+ percentage of participation, but what's in it may be very different. And I'd also be looking to see in there about under participation.
Are you underemployment?
Underemployment, correct.
Does everybody know what that means, underemployment?
Yeah.
Okay.
We know from Dr. Fuller that a lot of people since the recession took a haircut in income. They're back to work, but they're at 40, 60% less income than they were making prior. A lot of them haven't recovered. And so there's a big impact on what that means for them. And that hits to the all across race, economic spectrum. On the trades that this young man brought up is spot on. I got so excited about that because I've worked with my high school. I grew up here in Alexandria. The high school is a brand new $100 million school a few years back. Fantastic. All the toys. I'd be a pig in mud playing in all of them. Culinary program, unbelievable. Trades, you name it. I was a developer, real estate, and all the trades were begging for people. So I went to the school and said, okay, I'm on the CTE, which is the Career and Technical Education. The kids are not going to college. They're all in the trades. I said, well, why aren't you doing a program to get them transitioned into the companies? They want these people apprenticing when they're 17, 18 years old. Not happening. Parents were the biggest barrier. Absolutely the biggest barrier. Second, the kids didn't know what these careers were. Because even in the class, they didn't know what a crane operator makes. They didn't know what an HVAC master license makes, or a plumber, any of those. They had no idea. So I proposed a concept to the school system to go back where they graduate 6th grade, get the parents. When they graduate 8th grade, to go into 9th grade, get the parents. They say, you do it. I said, I'm volunteering, you get paid, you do it. That's a missed opportunity. That's a self-inflicted wound.
But that's not what the schools are there. That's what they'll tell you. That's not our job.
But who is going to create that career path
Before we
that
do
Carla
that-
brings up?
Before we do that, you've been very patient.
Actually, my question was also about the data for Tim. I'm wondering about how can you drill within a county? So kind of hitting on Carla's point that she made about place. Do you know, like Fairfax County is 400 square miles. So the odds are that if you drilled into Fairfax County, you might see different things in different sectors within the county. For strategies that we might want to approach, it's sometimes difficult to do it countywide. You've got the transportation issues, so if you want to have like places that, so can you drill down deeper?
Actually, I think they did on the second slide. They did
Well,
exactly that.
but in big aggregate buckets, you drill
No, I
down
don't
by.
think- no, I don't mean that.
Oh, is there
Here's
more?
the,
There's more.
Oh, good, so, because I'm just wondering within a county.
Right there.
Oh, gosh.
I didn't say it'd be easy,
I'm gonna blow
but they
myself
certainly
out,
done
yeah.
it. Yeah. So that gives you an idea within the counties what the participation rate is.
Okay, is there a way we could get that to the, try to analyze it all?
I don't know.
This looks like Census Bureau information that
Sharon?
George Mason.
I was going to say this was compliments of George Mason University Center for Regional Analysis, which we go to frequently. So we have some information. I don't know exactly how far down they drill, but we can certainly make that available. Something else I want to say, we weren't able to get stuff posted online because we've had the internet connection since the storms. All of this will be online for you to digest. I can't guarantee when, but soon.
And all the speakers had some type of presentation material. I thought it was more important when we did this to make sure there were plenty of time for the questions and comments that y'all had. So everything they've done will be posted, and I've seen them. They're really good information. I think all of you will benefit from it.
We do provide unemployment rates by census tract that we borrow from Census Bureau. It's available. Those are unemployment rates, and that gives you an idea of where potential labor could be. And I do want to drill down into these labor force participation rates and see, and that's a plan of ours, to see what demographic is not showing up that you could market to. I mean, I think that's something that no one's been doing a really good job of because many reasons, resources lack. But Richmond, for instance, we're concerned about the missed opportunities in federal housing projects. There's high crime there. There's a cycle of violence. How can we, as scientists, how can we change the orbit of those people? Well, you have to know where they are, and you have to have some good information, good intelligence. So we're going to be targeting those groups to see how we can outreach or what businesses around those housing projects would be willing to offer an apprenticeship to some young person, some mid-age person in those projects.
You got a question?
It's not a question, it's more of a overall summary. And to Carla's point about the individuals that have high barriers to employment, I think as we look at this whole issue with labor participation, we can't focus on one thing because I'm in the grassroots with Cornerstones, and I'm seeing individuals that not only have transportation issues in our county that can't get the site location for those construction sites because they don't have their own car. The soft skills, they don't show up on time, they don't understand the business acumen of what is involved with society here in the United States for being on time and doing those soft skills. The hiring process of technology going to everything being online affects those individuals with a lot of barriers who don't know how to use a computer and can't sit for over an hour to complete one application without having somebody one-on-one with them. And that's really difficult for us that are in the that industry. We're trying to sit with them, but we can't do that with the capacity issue, with the numbers that are out there. And then the language skills. It's just very difficult with individuals who don't have the language skills and the employers who aren't willing to help with that as far as providing English courses to their low income, their housekeepers, or things like that. So I think it's an overall big umbrella that we're all working on, and we can't just focus on one thing. We really have to have a big board that can look at how do we address all these issues at one time in order to help this population that has a lot of high barriers. And that will help bring in more people into the workforce.
And I would say, so absolutely agree with that. And I would also add to that is sort of, and what are the reasons and what's the context that we're working in? I think sometimes in our attempt to address issues, we jump to solutions without understanding causes. And often, when we focus around causes, we can have much greater impact because, it's not these isolated approaches. And I think we've built upon this throughout the discussion in terms of the expanded role of networks. And we've talked about folks in government, folks in the private sector, nonprofits, sort of the importance of all of us sort of working together to create these pathways and pipelines. But it's also understanding who we're talking about in the day-to-day circumstances people face. It's always tough when you have these types of conversations and you try to generalize at a county level, or you try to generalize at a population, in terms of a category by race or a category by age, like millennials. And it's really tough because, again, we're talking about individuals. The other thing I wanted to just bring up is that while I understand, sort of the automation of HR processes and things, this really gets to decision makers and who's in the role of decision making and relationships. And those things still matter. Influencing decision makers in having the right relationships, because that can create opportunity. And opportunity has to be really defined broadly. So we talked about things like transportation and how that can be a barrier. We also have to consider things like childcare. So often it's not about people not arriving to work on time because they just decided to sleep in a few extra hours. If any of us who maybe parents have either woken up to a sick kid or even worse, a sick caregiver, so then you have to scramble, So those are the things that I think we have to think creatively about. We talk often in our work about the opportunity structures that have to exist in every community and that have to be fully accessible in every community. And that opportunity structure is one that includes housing, it includes transportation, it includes childcare, it includes education, it includes food. It includes all of, a long list of things that we are fortunate in this area to have. It's really about understanding people's level of access to it. And when we think about level of access, that level of access is, can be impacted by language. That level of access can be impacted by, sort of having the status of an ex-offender. That level of access might be purely from lack of information. So understand, I think when we position ourselves to think about this work from the perspective of opportunity structures and what exists, what do we want in our community, and then take a step back and try and understand who isn't or who is positioned to access those opportunity structures. Again, I think we position ourselves to be more successful and collaborative in our work.
And on that, closes, so you all are out of time. When I do it, when you say it is 9:30, it is 9:30. Thank you all for a very lively discussion. Thank our speakers.
Hey, just very quickly, number one, this was a fantastic conversation. Not just a panel discussion, not just a sharing of information, but a true conversation. And I want to thank George, our moderator, Carla, Tim, Brent, and Abstentia for really reaching out and connecting with our audience. More than anything, I want to thank you, our audience, for engaging with us and being part of this. I think one of the things that we talked about earlier is that we have to break down those silos and create levels of communication between the various players in the workforce development system. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here with these workforce conversations. I see many of you who have been here for several of these, and I look forward to seeing you back. We are going to take a brief summer hiatus. We will be starting again in September. We're in the process of developing our program right now. I would hope to see each and every one of you, and please bring your friends. These are conversations that everybody benefits from some way, somehow, and just breaking down that, taking another brick out of a wall that you can see somebody else through is fantastic. So, with that, thank you guys, you were fantastic, and thank you guys, you were fantastic. Have a great summer, and we look forward to seeing you back again in September.